let's just assume for a moment that people don't know who you are. Give us the 2 to 3 minute intro on who's Dexter and what do you do?
My name is Dexter Hadley. I'm faculty at UCF, the College of Medicine, right here. I guess we're neighbors. And I'm the Chief of Artificial Intelligence at the College of Medicine. So I work on approaches in medicine and wellness and health using an AI approach, which means I work with a lot of the clinics, the hospitals, the startups, sort of the ecosystem here in Lake Nona. And been at this for what, 4 or 5 years now? Pre-COVID?
Well, one of the wonderful things about the line of work that you've chosen is you've found a way to be in a converging point of different disciplines, right? Which for me is actually very interesting, very exciting, because you're an MD, right? You have a PhD, you did a lot of work in genomics and pathology, right? But you have an engineering mind as well, right? So you have an MS, right? So you do coding as well. So you're trying to come to these problems with actually a variety of different lenses. How has that path been for you?
That's right. I would say obvious from a very young age. I always thought I would want to be a doctor and learn to code at 10, which is a pretty young age. So I've always been sort of pursuing this passion, which admittedly was relatively disparate 30 years ago at this point. But today it just makes a lot of sense that these two things go together. So I think just insightful, maybe, lucky, destiny. I'm not sure how to say it, but I've been thinking about these problems for quite some time. And this is
way before a lot of people were.
Before the term big data, before the genome was sequenced, before a long time, before precision medicine for a long time. Yeah.
So let's jump right in. Precision medicine. We've had that discussion a number of times.
Yeah.
Let's talk to the audience about that. What does that mean? Why is that important? Why should they care?
They should care. They should have cared since about 2013, 2014, when Obama announced this precision medicine initiative, because you've heard of evidence-based medicine. In the College of Medicine, we teach evidence-based medicine, at least we used to, where you need some paper, some peer-reviewed article, some evidence of why you would do this versus that to support a decision. Precision medicine is evidence-based medicine in the molecular realm. There's a lot more evidence to be found and discovered in the molecular realm. It's more precise, hence the name precision medicine. All of this is fine and well, except it has been a dismal failure, and I think most people have no idea. I've never even heard the term precision medicine. I think we're in Lake Nona Medical City. We are relatively biased, but the average person has no idea what precision medicine is. So if we approach it from that angle, I think there is a huge opportunity to make precision medicine great again with artificial intelligence.
And how does that work? So what is the role that artificial intelligence play in evidence-based medicine?
Well, as I said, there's a lot of evidence, right? So we have 3 billion, maybe 6 billion if you count 2 strands of DNA nucleotides. Let's say 5% or even 1% of that is functional in the human genome. That's millions of nucleotides. There's 4 bases at millions of nucleotides. The permutations associated with millions of nucleotides and the variation surrounded with them is immense. So you have BRCA1, you have BRCA2, you have EGFR, you have BRAF, you have about 5 or 6. I think the guidelines say there are 50, but there are millions to be discovered. So if you just think through in your puny human brains the combinatorics associated with real precision medicine, you'll soon realize it's an NP hard problem. No real answer. Sure, you have things like your experience as a physician. You have off-label, anecdotal experience, but there's no real deterministic way to, in a traditional sense, test millions or billions of permutations of a particular drug across a set of particular molecular markers without artificial intelligence or machine learning is one way to think about this.
So let me zoom out to try to paint a picture here for the audience, and then you can keep me honest, make sure that I'm looking at this the right way, right? So in the old model, let's say pre-AI, pre-precision medicine, you have an individual goes through med school, right? And they do all their years of med school, and what happens in med school, if everybody knows in generic terms, then that person starts, either seeing patients, doing surgeries and so forth, and there's this level of experience that starts being built up over the years, and the more patients you see, the more cases you see, the better you get, and you go to conferences, you talk to colleagues, so there's all these different things going on. And then society gives this person a level of trust because of what that person has studied, because of what the result that person has obtained through his or her career. As we fast forward to today, like you said, and we get better and better at observing smaller and smaller parts of our bodies, the combinations of what could be causing ABC go through the roof. And we need the help of artificial intelligence to be able to aid the doctor with the possibilities, because we no longer are able to trust the human, because it's unfair to ask the human to actually come up with that level of computational analysis.
That's right.
Is that correct?
100%. So I'm a pathologist by training. I train at Stanford in clinical pathology, which is lab medicine. And as a pathologist looking at a blood smear or a tumor, I'm medically responsible for gigapixel pathology today. That is unreasonable and almost impossible because a well-trained AI algorithm is responsible for gigapixel pathology with high accuracy, much higher than I could ever be. Not to mention variations in training straight out of school, you're still responsible or legally responsible. So it's an interesting paradigm, right, where resolutions are getting higher. I mean, 3D mammography, for instance, and all of these high dimensional tests are coming out, and it is becoming impossible to keep up with the resolution, the sheer resolution to the sheer quantity of knowledge that is coming in. Like, you just go Google artificial intelligence on PubMed, it's like, it's exponential. So we've stopped teaching in med school. I no longer teach and lecture these students because it's not an efficient way, I guess, to keep up with the current state of the art. So we have cases, students discover how to learn this information. They use artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. Do you know ChatGPT passes USMLE at a 96th percentile today? What does that mean for the med student? That means you're asking ChatGPT to help you pass your USMLE because it's 4% of the time you'll be better than it. 96% of the time it's going to outshine you. That's crazy. Like, writing notes is no longer, I mean, there's a good question in medical education if we should even write. Everybody has some ChatGPT, recorder that is just extracting, coding CPT codes and ICD codes, getting doctors paid, and writing the SOAP and the history notes, right? So the good, the sort of cutting edge medical education programs today have integrated AI following students from MS1 through the end of the med school, sort of personalizing the interaction, reading, in sync with the patient registry, so you know what cases the next morning you're going to get pimped on. I mean, it's really incredible how far some of these, you can go in medicine, sort of just in the education, much less in actual clinical practice with these things.
So just for the audience, because I love this example, you and I have talked about this in the past, is gigapixel pathology. But it also, there's a level of education that has to take place with the audience as well, right, with the patients, because if a doctor comes in, so you say, you studied at Stanford, you're a pathologist, you look at imaging, and you're looking at that imaging, and based on your experience, you come to some conclusions. People are okay with that because they trust you. But if all of a sudden an AI is doing something, some people become skeptical. When in reality, the AI is actually capable of looking at every pixel, not just of that image, but then compare it to hundreds of thousands or millions of other images.
That's right.
And then help the doctor make a better assessment.
It depends how you ask the question. I think evidence shows most people, at least most young people, are more comfortable in a telemedicine visit than with a real person. Mm-hmm. Are you surprised? No, I'm not. My 3 daughters text each other from upstairs to downstairs. So, I mean, obviously they're more comfortable with a screen interface than in real person. It is what it is. Roblox apparently is the cause of this epidemic. But it's just wild. I think that's unclear. I think there is an argument to be made that telemedicine has certainly made my life easier with 5 children. And it can certainly, in the age of AI, be made just different paradigms for how medicine should and could be delivered. Very exciting paradigms, I think, are
Indeed.
coming.
So, you're here in Lignona, you're a resident of Lignona, you're a professor here, and the chief of AI. What are the things that you guys are doing there that we need to be aware of now?
So, in Lignona, in the College of Medicine, so I mean, it's a double-edged sword. So it's really hard to change anything in medicine. Imagine we can train a large language model today to grade med students. Can you imagine explaining to a super alpha med student why they got a 1, 2, or a 3? And to your point, it's not going to happen, right? That's just not how it works, especially going up the line. But I think, if we're trying to offer use cases that are embraced by the community. Again, I'm a pathologist. If you ever did cytology, that's looking for cells in some sample of fluid from ascites or whatever. If you ever looked at mammograms or screening mammography, I mean, these are like 1 in 2,000 odds of finding anything interesting, right? Really low odds. Imagine if you had an AI that could reduce that melanoma detection in melanocytic moles. Those are, so, or a poor med student that's poor at taking notes, right? They're very rare. They're usually really good. So there's, the AI can kind of reduce what is a high pretest probability that you're going to be. You don't have cancer and you're probably can write notes. But if the AI can reduce my volume from 2,000 to 20 or from 100 melanoma to 10, or that's value, right? So at least me, I tend to work on these type of problems where it kind of fits with the way AI is today. AI today is relatively dull, relatively meaning zero-shot AI is not a reality today, right? So we need lots of examples of everything, of text, of images, of almost everything. So what do you have? A lot of examples of the negatives. You have a lot of examples of the negatives. Is what you have a lot of misconfidence or lack confidence in is the true positive examples in medicine. And that tends to be an example, Pareto's principle or something, right? So this tends to hold throughout medicine. But the really interesting cases are the rare ones, which you probably can't train AI on anyway, at least not medical legal AI, right? Where you can stand up in court and say, this is how this works, and this is why this works. You know what I'm saying? So we look for good use cases, I think, of this technology. Medical education is relatively safe. You can hardly get sued working with med students and sort of working with preclinical data. But yeah, we kind of look for high volume things. There's a lot of data, there's a lot of need, and there's a lot of interest sort of from the clinical staff to make this happen. It's impossible to get anything done without input from the experts. That's another sort of pearl I've learned. One of the 3 thoughts I'd like to leave here today with. You really need to have buy-in from the experts, not the computer scientists.
Yeah, no, indeed. So the goal there, right, is to get all that data so that we can have better outcomes, right?
Absolutely.
But that in itself is a multidimensional problem, right? And again, I need you to keep me honest because you're the expert here. But on one hand, you have that there's a lot of imaging there's a lot of data out there, patient data, whether it's imaging, whether it's blood samples, whether it's, whatever the case may be. And, that may or may not be available to train AI models, because that's a separate problem, for a different discussion on the availability of the data. But assuming that we have data, most of the data is kind of tailored to what's wrong instead of what's right, right? And if, in a world of wanting to improve the outcomes, using digital health to improve the outcomes meaning that people get better, people get healthier. But there's also the other side of people, the preventive side, of preventive medicine, right? And those two, at least in my mind, they seem to not be being addressed at the same time because of the quality of the data that's available. Am I right on this?
Yeah, I think it's a different perspective or lens you can look at this at. So Obama introduced the concept of precision medicine, which by definition, healthy people don't need medicine, right? So I think a better way to think, in 2013, 2012, there was no Apple Watch, there was no preponderance of wearables, nothing. It was really about the medicine and biomarkers. I mean, is it any surprise it failed? How many doctors go order a genome test to go diagnose their patient? Not many. How many look at an X-ray or a pathology scan? Many, right? So I see it as an inevitable, cart before the horse scenario where only the Harvards and the Yales and the Stanfords are going to be doing this stuff. And that's kind of what happened. Like you go to, the Johns Hopkins, they have fantastic tumor panels, but the average, community health center is not doing this stuff, right? But they are looking at radiology and pathology just to practice medicine. So I feel like without AI, most of genomics is really statistics, a chi-square test. It's really an ANOVA, a couple of ANOVAs, logistic regression, very simple statistics on a large scale. I think the inability to look at pixels in pathology, the inability to look at sequence, like with a large language model today, it just didn't exist, right? It just didn't exist 10, 15 years ago. But today, with the kind of models that we have and the way that the machine learning works, especially the supervised types of models that have better visual accuracy than a human, have better recall than a human in words and in concepts. Zero-shot learning is almost a possibility with some of these better large language models today. I think it's just a whole different set of tools. So it's not just the molecular realm that becomes precision, it's the pixel realm in imaging. It's the sequence realm, actually, in sequencing or in EKGs or in waveforms for longitudinal data. Like all of this data is just so rich and relatively untapped because, how much can you do with a chi-square test, right? Bayes' theorem will only get you that far, but we are so much further today. I think it's a whole new realm. I think AI really will make precision medicine great again. Just because just plug it in. Everybody has X-rays, and how many people are going to go send a genotype or a sequencing scan, right? It's just not, it's just a disconnect, right? So I have this idea that AI makes routine data much more powerful in medicine. You don't have to go buy special equipment or be at a Johns Hopkins or a Stanford or a Penn or a Yale or a Harvard, right? Community medicine is, I think this opens the door. At one level. At the other level, you have like welfare programs, right? You have all of these programs that are going underutilized, budgeted for by Congress. WIC, there's mammography programs for the underserved. There's all these programs that nobody actually knows about, and it's impossible to actually go read the protocols and the guidelines for how you qualify for these things, right? So in a day and age where you have ChatGPT, you can ask any quanta of information. It would be really awesome to kind of fine-tune these programs to, the average African-American female with a history of breast cancer should know they need an MRI and not just a mammogram. And this is not knowledge to anybody. And they should know there are programs available if you're on WIC to go get one. That would save a lot more lives than any genomics, you know what I mean? And AI offers that ability today, the ability to turn text and interaction into an API that you can code for.
So I want to jump into a topic that I think, we could talk for hours, but, we We don't have ours, but it's, you were the co-author of a book with a couple of other people that we both know, Dr. Metcalf and Dr. Cooper. And the book is called ABC. And A stands for AI, the B stands for blockchain, and the C stands for cybersecurity. 15, 20 years ago, I would not put those three together, but you guys actually put a book together.
Sure.
And talk about the convergence of those three. Tell us about that, and let's expand on that for a little bit.
Sure. So, let's assume, the Nobel Prize this year went to Geoffrey Hinton for, I think it was chemistry, because of, I want to say DeepSeek, but it's AlphaFold. Folding proteins, they folded all the computational proteins possible, and which is, just a host of precision medicine just waiting to happen. They've kind of tied up in a bow and given to humanity. Admittedly, he deserved the Nobel Prize. But what did Hinton do? He's not a chemist. Like, he developed backpropagation, right? The solution to this very hard problem of solving AI problems, right? Backpropagation is in all of it. How you optimize these problems and get to a solution and learn. So you have a Nobel Prize winner, proving AI can solve incredible problems. Now, protein structure is well defined. These databases exist. It's not, there's 20 amino acids. You have some finite length of amino acids. There's only so many possible proteins possible. You could probably enumerate all of them. Yeah, there are a lot, but you could probably enumerate all of them. And nobody really debates what the amino acid code is, how many, these are facts. Well, you run into trouble when the facts become not facts or alternative facts, right? And that becomes a problem of trust. So let's assume you could train this AI to do anything. The protein code is a good example. Nobody's questioning that Hinton should win the Nobel Prize. Is all the full complement of proteins folded and everything else. So just a whole drug repertoire waiting to be discovered. But when the facts are questionable, then you have a problem of trust. Forget the AI. If you don't have trust, then you don't have anything. Right? So the blockchain is really a synonym for trust. So it builds trust into the system so that where you don't have a amino acid and a codon code and things that can be proven, you have zero knowledge proofs that this quanta of data does actually represent a true positive or a true negative or a false positive or a false negative or whatever it is you're trying to learn or reduce or optimize for. Right? And we're talking about medicine, right? So, the AI is intelligence, that's necessary. You got to make decisions in a trustworthy type of manner. But again, there's no trust without privacy in medicine, right? So you have to have some modicum of privacy, and that kind of is where the cyber comes in. So I think that's another way to think about this, really intelligence, trust, and privacy, which is what makes medicine work today. At least research in medicine, that's how it works today.
So that is, are we getting close to that, or are we just scratching the surface just now?
I think it is mandatory now because you can, just look at the rate that AI is being deployed and generating and there's the amazing advancements every week. Who can keep up with this stuff, right? So I think blockchain, well, we'll see what happens with the new administration, but at least in medicine, there's a great use case for blockchain. So when I say blockchain, what do I mean? I mean that there is a democratic answer to what is true and what is false, right? So you can imagine in machine learning, if I, let's just pick cancer. If I was building a predictor for pathology of cancer, there's a market potentially for pathology of cancer. If I was doing a clinical trial for approval of some new drug, I will pay people for their cells at apheresis. That's just how it works. So at some point you would imagine paying people for their data to go train these algorithms. I could tell you as a fact, the FDA is, for instance, to get an FDA approval for a diagnostic digital pathology test, you need 50,000 whole slide images. Who has 50,000 whole slide images, right? So the FDA has calls now through various mechanisms to build up these public indices where data will be bought and sold to get FDA approval, just like drugs. Just like, you pay for mice, you pay for people, you pay for monkeys, you pay for whatever. to demonstrate to the FDA you have safety, efficacy in phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3. Same thing is coming for AI. And we just don't have the data to do it. And, the FDA knows what they want, they're building these mechanisms. How do you how do you prove that these are true positive mammograms or whole slide images and not GANs generated from China or, let me not say, but from some alternative fake actor? Well, that's blockchain, right? That's a public registry of data, and if you kind of think about it, we all pay for the healthcare of this country, whether we like it or not, right? It is it is in our interest to maintain such a data set, because we all pay Medicare taxes, we all pay Medicaid taxes, we all pay all kinds of taxes. We don't benefit from them, right? So this would be a way. The insurance companies benefit from them; they have access to a lot of this data. This would be, and the laws and HIPAA and these laws say that we're supposed to have and control our data. Yet there's no digital health application today that encourages patients to own their data, use it for meaningful use it for research. Apple has tried, but they sell phones. What business are they in actual medical research? That doesn't make any sense, right? But if you kind of go to the institutions of higher education, this only goes on in the best places, like Harvard's and the Yales and the Stanfords and the Penns and so on and so forth. So so you ask me, what do I do? So I like to bring this kind of thinking, this kind of forward thinking, this kind of reach to local community schools like UCF, like we're a state school, I think that's inevitably going to be the future. The value of rural data, of ethnic data, of rare data, and so on and so forth is the future of AI in medicine.